Are you spontaneously becoming fifth dimensional? Are you receiving downloads from the fifth dimension, from your angels and your guides and your higher self? Are you suddenly becoming far more energetically sensitive and aware, and it's working to your advantage? My name's Sonia Choquette. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about receiving messages from your guides from the fifth dimension in real time for real life situations, and how to actually do more of that, as well as how to understand and receive those messages when they do arrive. In the event that you think it's weird and woo-woo and how did that happen, and you might be inclined to ignore them. If you're new to my channel, thank you for coming. I'm so excited you're here. And let's get on with how to receive your messages from the fifth dimension. The first thing is to understand what the fifth dimension is. It's not a place, it's a vibration. It is a frequency and a state of mind. The third dimension is when your outlook and your understanding of life is restricted to the physical earth. And it's, if I can't see it, hold it, measure it, it doesn't exist. Now, fortunately, a great deal of humanity is beginning to recognize that that's not modern science. That is not true. We are energetic beings. We do have an energetic exchange with life. And in fact, everything is energy. Being in the third dimension means you're just not registering it. You're just not picking up the more subtle communication and interactions of life. People who are in the third dimension exclusively are sometimes called obtuse, and people just say you didn't get the memo, or she couldn't read the room, or they missed the writing on the wall, because their frequency of perception is very limited and tuned out. But if you are receiving messages from the fifth dimension, if you are becoming more fifth dimension vibrationally oriented, you're going to feel energy. You're going to be perceptive. You're going to read the room, see the writing on the wall. You're going to sense if something's wrong with someone, and quite accurately so. You're going to have vibes about whether to move forward in a certain way or step away from things. And it's all very subtle. Now, when these messages come from the fifth dimension, sometimes they aren't so subtle. Sometimes they're quite specific and quite dramatic. For example, have you ever woken up in the middle of the night with a strong message or a strong sense that you were just being guided about something, or even had a visitation? You felt like there was an angel or a person talking to you? This is something that's happening more and more and more often to many of my clients. And if it's happening, please put that in the comments. Or have you ever had a sudden strong feeling that you have to do something different, check on your health or call your mom or move away or something of that nature? These are also fifth dimension guidance, protecting you and trying to prevent you from having trouble. For example, I have a client, a wonderful woman who owns a big construction company. She said the other night she woke up out of a dead sleep with a very, very strong message that she had to fire a client, not a client, she had to fire an employee whom she knew was not really a star employee, had called in sick quite a few times, had been late. His work wasn't really top par, but he worked often on site, and he drove a company truck to do so. In the middle of the night, she woke up and she said, I knew I had to fire him, because if I didn't, he was going to get into an accident because he was an alcoholic. This is not any information that I had directly any conscious awareness of, but it was so strong that I almost was having an anxiety attack about it. So, not to ignore my feeling, I called my staff together, I called my managers together, and I just said, I've got to fire the guy. Fortunately, they had enough reason to fire him instead of yet another warning. So they just let him go. Now, she said I didn't need to sit around to figure out find out if my download was accurate, because if I did, my company would be in trouble. He clearly was not managing his life responsibly at any level, and I didn't want him to be in my truck and cause my company trouble because of his poor choices. Now, that's how to live as a fifth dimension person. You don't need to sit around and rationalize and make sure that something's right. If you get a strong feeling, that's coming from your higher self and divine support system. That's coming from your angels and your protective guides. So the way to be fifth dimension is just say yes. Now, when you're in the middle and you're getting the messages, but you don't know how to receive them, it's very tempting to ignore them. I had another client, a young man in his late 30s, who was on his way to work. He was a pharmaceutical salesman. He drove in a territory, but it was mostly local, although he found himself driving sometimes 3-4 hours in a day. And while he was driving along, he had a sudden, strong message. You need to get a physical, check your heart. Now, he got the message, but he rationalized it. He said to himself, I'm just in the pharmaceutical business. That's just kind of a stream of consciousness because I'm always talking about illnesses and things as I sell the different drugs that I represent. So he ignored it. Well, a couple months later, he had it happen again. Only this time, it was just while he was cleaning up after dinner with his family. Check your heart. That's it. No warning. We weren't talking about it. He said it just dropped in, but it was really strong. And it wasn't, he said it wasn't words. It was just this feeling, this like burst. Check your heart. Again, he rationalized, okay, but I'm good. I feel good. I don't have any problems. I don't have any symptoms. I'm not even overweight. I'm pretty healthy. Okay, I will next time I go to get a medical checkup. And again, he decided do nothing about it. Message received, no action, following that. Well, again, 3-4 months later, suddenly one day he woke up and he did not feel good. He felt nauseated. He took a shower thinking that would help. It didn't. And his wife said, I'm taking you to the emergency room. This is not okay. You look green. So she took him to the emergency room and they checked his heart and they said, oh my God, you're on the verge of a heart attack. 3 of your 4 arteries are completely blocked. It's like, how can that be? I'm not overweight. I exercise good enough. What are you talking about? And they said, well, it's not always just diet and weight. You have a genetic high cholesterol problem probably, and this is serious. So he had immediate angioplasty on 3 arteries that day. Now, he was lucky. He could have had a heart attack, but he had also been forewarned for 6 or 7 months, and he ignored it. Now, a fifth dimension person would not. Now, if you get a vibe, if you get a message, if you get a download and it bursts into your awareness, at minimum, say it out loud because that'll help you not ignore it. If you're being guided, if you're being helped, you don't want to get the message and then throw away the value of the message. And that is when you become in the fifth dimension, when you're wired in the fifth dimension frequency. You receive this as much as if you see it with your eyes or your ears, you're holding it. This is important information from which you should make your decisions. So how do we receive or how do we accelerate that? Well, first of all, before we go on to the steps to actually start calling in more fifth dimension energy from your guides, is if anything has happened to you of this nature, whether you listened or not, put it in the comments because this is one of the major tools to use to amplify a connection with your higher self, the fifth dimension, and your guides. When you write it down, what you're actually doing is A, acknowledging that I am receiving something, and B, you are putting importance on it. So you're training your subconscious mind to start listening to your inner guidance, okay? You're starting to train your subconscious mind to recognize that you are getting help from a higher dimension because it's how you're wired as a spiritual being. Now, another way to lose the message is not to trust it or to ask people what they think. People, first of all, you may ask people, but unless they're fifth dimension wired, they're not going to necessarily encourage you to listen to this guidance, which is gold. They might say, well, that's weird, or that, and you might some disparaging comment that just gives you even more reason to pause. So if you're going to look for support, which isn't human nature, when you get these kinds of downloads, at least ask for that support from sources that will be genuinely supportive, who are also tuning into their guides, to their higher self, to energy, to being informed in a higher way, okay? Now, how to actually receive guidance more often is what you need to do is to create the quiet, the space, and the ideal conditions to receive guidance. It is natural. You do have a higher self and a divine support system, and they are trying to communicate, but you're the radio receiver. You have to dial in. One of the ways to do that is to just take maybe 15 minutes a day, sit quietly, don't be disturbed, literally turn your phone off, shut a door if possible. You don't have to turn off the lights. If it can help if that helps calm your mind, go ahead. And just as a little side note, Conrad Hilton used to do that, the inventor of the Hilton hotel chain. He used to sit quietly in his office with it dimmed and listen for guidance. And look what it did for him. Changed the world. So you sit quietly, you be undisturbed. Rub your hands together, shake them out and turn them upward. You don't have to hold them in the air. You can put them in your lap. But what they are is they're connected to your heart, and that information comes through your heart and it pops up. So you kind of it's this open-hearted, receptive stance. And then you can do one of two things. If there's a particular issue that is challenging, you can ask for guidance. What is the best way to handle this? I like to avoid the word should. Not what should I do, just how can I best address or respond to this circumstance? I have a client who had a long-term assistant, and they were just parting ways, and they were clashing a lot, and she just didn't know how to navigate that, so she asked for guidance. And she'd been fussing over it in her head for a long time, and her guidance, when she said, what is the best response to this? She received, ask your assistant/partner if they're ready to leave. Just instead of thinking it's going to be, say, are you ready to leave? Are you seeking a change? And that was surprising guidance for her because there was never any conversation or indication that was the case. And her assistant said she would love to work part-time or maybe only work 2 days a week and only on specific projects as her helper and designer. And end of struggle. She said that would be ideal. I would welcome that. And so they renegotiated. She asked for insight and direction instead of letting her ego handle it, which would be, this is a problem, my assistant's a problem, and her not focusing is a problem. And she said it just solved everything. So you ask for guidance if the situation you're in or circumstances is requiring more insight and guidance. When you get it, you sit quietly as you listen, and don't look for words, look for feelings, look for downloads, just a clarity that wasn't there before or a suggestion. And then I recommend that you say it out loud. I recommend that you don't dismiss it or kind of disperse it. I have a student I'm teaching, and I was having them go through a certain series of exercises that would allow them to receive more downloads. And her intellect just chattered away the whole time. Why do I need to do it this way? Why can't I do it that way? Just arguing and complicating a very simple process of listening to your heart and inner self for guidance. And I said, do whatever you want, but what you're doing is just your ego won't stop, your brain won't stop. And what guidance did you get? You have to help yourself, set yourself up for success, not sabotage yourself with bad habits. And then if you don't have any particular situation in mind, just ask your guides for direction. Just what do I want? What would be best to be aware of today? What would be best? What would be important to focus on today? Okay, that's a very big question. And just sit and see what comes to mind. Just see what comes to mind. I had a client who tried that, and she said what came to mind for her was get groceries. And she thought, well, that's pretty practical. And yes, I do need to get groceries. But guess what? She went to the grocery store. What she would normally put off to the weekend, she went after work. And when she was in there and after work, she met someone in the produce department that was such a nice friend, and she had been wanting to make new friends, and they chatted up and decided that they were going to meet and go on walks together, something she had really wanted. So go to the grocery store. And they were going to go and do a couple of yoga classes together. Just have a buddy. Go to the grocery store, which tells you sometimes the downloads are indirect. So you want to always understand whatever comes through. It has value and meaning, even if it's not straight on direct, okay? Be open to everything. I had a class recently in working with teaching my students how to have a more direct connection with guides. And I asked them, just sit quietly and really ask, who am I? What is my real purpose in life? What is my real strengths and talents? Where should I focus and really address my sense of self right now? And every single one of them went from being vague and uncertain to absolutely clear about who they were, what their gifts are, and what their spirit needed. This is something that consumes most people forever, draining you and leaving you feeling ungrounded and leaving you feeling lost. So you can ask that too. Who am I? Who am I really? And you're not looking for an outside voice in that way. You're looking for your own higher self to give you the download. What are my talents? So you quit challenging, ignoring, or questioning what really your heart is calling you to do. So these are just a couple of tips and tools, but I really want you to put in the comments below what and how your guidance is coming through for you. Are you creating opportunity by creating a little quiet and asking for guidance? Are you receiving downloads? And if you are receiving them, are you listening? Like my client who knew she needed to fire an alcoholic client who had put her company in danger if he was driving her truck? Or did you ignore it like my other client who didn't check his heart and spared himself by a thread later, barely escaped a heart attack? Now, the point is, we have resources and guidance available to us that are far beyond our logic brain and what meets the eye. And if you're going to live as a fifth dimension being who is connected to self, to others, to this planet, and to the spirit realm, you can plug in. And now is the time to do that by just simply tuning in, listening, and having that direct interaction and conversation, having that direct exchange. Very important to do. And to let yourself feel affirmed by writing it down, naming it out loud, and for most of all, just to say, yes, I'm listening, and I will make this important. I will use this guidance to my benefit. So thanks for tuning in. If you found this useful, I invite you to give me a thumbs up, and really more importantly, to become a subscriber, because every week we're giving tips and tools and guidance in how to live as a fifth dimension, conscious, multidimensional, spirit-guided person who can have a life of elegance and flow. That's the design. That is the natural plan. So I'm glad you were here. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing more with you next week. All my love.